Hi, I'm John Dempsey from Green Sefton, and I'm really looking forward this afternoon to speaking to the Killen family, who have an incredible connection with the Heritage Park of Derby Park in Bootle, and of course Killen Green just down the road in Netherton. Thanks so much for coming today. I think it's really lovely that you're sharing the memories of the park, and around the Bootle itself. So there's just a few questions I'd like to ask you. It's quite informal, it's trying to get your memories of the sites and happy memories and family history, and also the wider history of the park.
Yes, our father worked for the corporation right from school, 16.
And what was your father's name?
It was James.
So
Jim Killen, known locally as Jim Killen.
Jim Killen, okay. So how long did he work in the park? He started at 16?
He actually started at 16.
14.
What was 14, I'm wrong already.
14, you've been told?
I wasn't born. Yeah, so he literally worked his way up through the ranks, so to speak. And then Mr. Hitler got involved and he was away for 6 years. Prior to that, he'd done a lot of studying in high school. And that enabled him, with his experience, particularly after being away through the war, to come back. And when eventually the opportunity came that they needed a new director of parks, he applied. Obviously along with other people from other parts of the country, but was successful. The house actually came with the job, so to speak, what we called in those days a tied house.
Tied house, yeah.
Which, interesting, later on, but at the time, the family then moved in, which consisted really of Jean, Marie and Frank. Because Anne was born, no, they were born just before they moved in. She was a few months old. That was 1950, and then I was born in 51, and we lived there for many long years till I was 19, and our father unfortunately passed away at the right early age of 54.
That must have been quite something.
Fantastic, really, wasn't it? It was. Remember when my dad got the car? Do you remember that? And he first got his car.
No, I don't. I've got one, I think.
We were all excited, weren't we, Jean?
Yes.
Instead of him going around the parks in a van with the foreman, I don't know if it would.
He used to have a green van, didn't he?
He used to have a green van, then he got a car. And we, of course, were all delighted to go on a day out in the car.
Can you remember what type of car it was?
Black Ford Poplar.
Black Ford Poplar. Well, how times change. I'm driving around in a white electric van outside.
Yes.
But it must have been wonderful as children growing up with the park literally on your doorstep.
Yes, it was like our back garden, really. Every window you looked out at, you saw the beautiful scenery of the lovely borders down the front path. And in the winter, it was just like a Christmas card. But at the time, we didn't think anything of it because that's what we really viewed as.
There
were some disadvantages though. Tom might remember because he was always so good. But my older brother Frank and I perhaps pushed our luck a bit more. And when we'd be playing hide and seek and things like that around the park, and obviously playing on the Black Hills and various places behind the fabulous hedges and privets that had been carefully cut out, we thought we'd get away with it all. But of course, little did we know how well known the park keepers would know Mum and Dad. And know us. And then Frank and I come strolling in after playing out all day to be greeted with my mum, absolutely furious, and the park keeper sitting next to her having a cup of tea, saying, "It was those two."
One main reason was most of the housing immediately around the park were terraced, with no back gardens, maybe a yard or whatever. So for the green space, it was the park. You didn't have front gardens, you didn't have back gardens. You'd have to go a little bit further afield to find houses, some semi-detached with a garden. So if you wanted to sit on the grass, you went to the park.
And as you were saying as well, Bootle's history, and as well as the Derby Park, Bootle itself has changed a bit over the years, but when the park was created, it was very much central, wasn't it, to what you might call Bootle Village.
Yes, yeah.
Well, that was Bootle, that village, just here really, just where we are now. And it expanded dramatically. For example, one is everybody knows sort of Gladstone Dock, but when that was first built just sort of the late 1800s when the park was built. That was the biggest dock in the world.
Yes.
So there's various firsts that Bootle has achieved over the years, and people just sort of take it for granted.
And of course the park itself still has some quite historical elements in it, things like the Poulsen Monument and other things.
Exactly.
It's got lots of monuments.
Yes.
And lots of people played bowls as well, you know, you're not looking at bowls, are you? Yeah.
Three, and the bandstand that was in use.
That was wonderful. For
But just before you move away from the park, I remember as a child sort of kneeling on my bed at sort of 8:30ish, 9 o'clock on a summer's evening, and it would be like a football match. The crowd leaving the 3 bowling greens to get for the last pint.
Yeah.
The pubs closed at 10 o'clock.
Okay.
So at 9:30 we were on the way to the local pubs. But it was really, when you know the size of those double gates onto Worcester Road, Oxford Road.
Yes.
And there were always lots of spectators, weren't there?
Yeah.
Sitting around.
We used to go.
We used to go sit there.
Watch my dad play bowls.
Great. And then go to the pub afterwards.
Yes.
Well, when we all
At
went to
night.
bed, but all during the day, the house was just never locked. The front door was never locked. None of us, including my
Back door
dad, had
wasn't
a key because we just walked in and out. That was it. And my dad said we'd never go to bed till we were all in, so he would lock the front door. So it wouldn't have occurred to you to take the key out. And I think that, which is surprising because it was in a park, it was totally isolated, and you never felt scared coming into the park at night on your own. It was dark, obviously dark, but you always felt so safe. And I think the whole ambience of that park, you felt safe. Everywhere you went around there, you felt safe. And I think it inculcated in all of us, even though we didn't really realise it was happening, a real sense of belonging and community, because everyone's involved in their communities and feel a sense of belonging. So I think that was a byproduct. Nobody set out to organise it, but it was just the way of life. You felt that. And I think we were all, and still am, incredibly proud of being brought up in Bootle.
So
Now, of course, you thought
goals.
grew up cold.
Gold.
And the one thing you learned very early on was how to get completely dressed and undressed
Fast.
under the bed. You just had your head out and just
Icicles would be on the window when you
Wonderful.
woke
On the
up.
inside.
Let me ask.
Well, that came later, really, after my dad died.
You know, you mentioned Poulsen earlier on in the discussions, and in that sort of era, they tended to name like this. There's a Poulsen estate, you know, so a Poulsen dad, etc., etc. And because my dad had done his sort of 25 years, well, as director, he obviously worked there from only job he had working there, which would have effectively been 40 years service. They very kindly constructed a park area in Netherson, which they went on to call Killen Green Park, which is
In memory of my dad, really.
Wonderful legacy and what wonderful memories you all have of it, of the heritage. Thank you so much for talking to us today. Thank you.
Thank you.